Right now on Upfront.
Battle lines drawn.
It's a policy. It's got nothing to do with the budget.
This weekend, the state budget battle officially underway. Republicans stripping more than 600 provisions from Democratic Governor Tony Evers' budget.
The fact that these things are being pulled out of the budget today.
The first big meeting inside the Capitol, and we're there. This Sunday, the top lawmakers on the Budget Writing Committee with us. The Republican co-chairs, Senator Howard Marklein, Representative Mark Bourne, and the ranking Democratic member, Senator LaTanya Johnson.
American Pope.
I'm so excited. I feel like I should open a bottle of champagne.
We're here in Chicago, the birthplace of Pope Leo XIV. Now the future of the Catholic Church and what it means from the Pope's hometown and across Wisconsin.
What type of leader of the Catholic Church is he going to be?
The Pope, politics, and the future, all coming up.
Day in court. Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan set to appear in federal court this week, now charged with helping an undocumented migrant evade federal immigration officials.
The intention was to intimidate judges.
Now more than 150 former judges condemning the Trump administration, and retiring U.S. District Judge Nancy Gertner, who spearheaded the effort, is with us.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Happy Mother's Day on this split edition of Upfront. Jaron is in Chicago.
Matt, for the first time in history, an American-born Pope will lead the more than 1.2 billion Catholics all around the world. Pope Leo XIV, born in and growing up right here in Chicago. We'll talk about who he is and his impact on politics coming up.
Jaron, can't wait. We'll see you in a few. But first, the budget battle lines now drawn and the clock ticking for lawmakers and the governor to reach an agreement. Republicans stripping 612 of the governor's policy proposals as promised and essentially starting over.
Today we are here for our first executive session.
Inside the halls of the Capitol,
we have an opportunity, and I would argue an obligation.
The state's powerful budget writing committee with the urgency of crafting the next 2-year spending plan, and we're there. A divided government, a $4 billion state surplus, and uncertainty in Congress.
There's more than one way to do a lot of this stuff too, right?
With that, the two Republican co-chairs, Senator Howard Marklein and Representative Mark Bourne, with us. The first motion is stripping some 600 provisions from what the governor proposed. Should anyone be surprised by any of that?
I don't think so. It's what we've done in the past. We're pretty much following the pathway that we've done for the last few budgets. So we're taking out the policy out of the budget. I believe those items should be debated not by 16 members of the Joint Finance Committee, but ought to be separate legislation and go through the legislative process. And there's some things in there that I support that we're pulling out too. Again, don't think people should be too surprised by the things we pulled out.
Let's talk about tax cuts. From your perspective, where are these conversations and negotiations with the governor and Republican leaders? Where do they stand?
I think right now the governor doesn't seem serious about talking about it. He keeps trying to push it into the budget discussion more, and we would prefer to know our starting point, and so the talks are ongoing. Hopefully they'll be more productive than they have been.
The governor's office told WisPolitics this past week, we look forward to Republican leaders bringing us a plan that both caucuses support, that invests in education at every level, among other critical priorities, in order to move forward. Is that what you guys are planning to do?
Sounds to me like he's asking for the last couple of budgets we sent him, right? And invested in priorities in Wisconsin and had good tax reform. Some of them he took, some of them he didn't take, but that's the budgets that certainly since we've been co-chairs that we've built.
Big picture, are you looking at overall cuts in spending to the plan you want to craft?
I think it'll be a similar approach to the past couple of budgets where we always look for opportunities to reduce the size of government, make some cuts in agencies, as well as invest in priorities. All's on the table as we work through the details of the process.
Yeah. I don't have to tell you about the uncertainty at the federal level. That includes Medicaid. More than half of the funding for the state comes from the federal government. What happens if some of that goes away to your budget process?
We don't know what's going to happen yet. And Mark and I don't have any inside information as to what's going on in D.C. So
that's for sure.
we're just going to wait and see. We've always based our budget decisions on the best available information, and that includes new tax collection projections next week, and it also will be obviously monitoring what's going on in D.C. and what the impact may be here.
How concerning is it given the current environment in D.C. right now?
I'm not overly concerned about it. I think the federal government makes changes all the time. They've made changes in previous budgets. People are curious about it now. It's getting a lot more attention, but they still have to actually make changes before it actually impacts the state.
Is there a scenario then that we'll see cuts to Medicaid here in the state based off what could happen federally, or do we invest more at the state level?
That's all to be determined.
Yeah.
I mean,
We're not going to try to craft a speculative budget about what might happen.
Are we going to see a big prison reform package as what comes out of this budget? The governor proposing closing Green Bay, modernizing Waupun, some of the early release stuff he's talking about?
I think it's possible. There's just a lot of work to be done there yet. And so it's going to depend on how serious people are about it. If the governor was doing it to check a box to make it look like for the first time he cared about prison reform and closing Green Bay and stuff like that, then probably not. If he's going to be open to some other ideas, because his plan is not the complete path to do this.
Are we closer, do you think, in your mind than we have been in years past on this conversation?
Well, I think this time around, I think in the past, I think the door was sort of shut, by the governor in terms of any kind of, possibilities of adding beds or whatever. So at least, I think there's a crack now in the door. So I think, the solution needs to be comprehensive. The easiest part is closing Green Bay, but then what do you do? What's the ripple effect throughout the system?
Right. Yeah. Everyone can see that goal is good.
Yeah.
The plan on how to get there and ensure public safety along the way, that's where the debate's going to happen.
Big picture, as this works through the process and it gets to each of your chambers, Senator, do you think you're going to need Democratic votes to pass the budget out of the Senate?
We don't know. We have no idea. I can't speculate here and sitting here in May and what it might look like in a month and a half or 2 months from now.
Perhaps a little easier for Republicans in the Assembly.
I don't know if it's ever an easy process, but my goal is always the same, is to build a budget that every member of my caucus can vote for and will vote for. We were able to do that last time. It's the same goal this time.
Is there a scenario that we have no new state budget this cycle? There's been some speculation about that.
I think it's our goal to get a budget passed. I mean, that's always been our goal, and so I'm hopeful that we can accomplish that.
Speaker Vos somewhat hinted at that in terms of the governor's veto and the Supreme Court now upholding the governor's veto authority. Is this budget really going to be written with literally no numbers in it?
I think that's a strong possibility, but I don't see any dates. 2027 will have to be written out, I think.
Republicans holding 12 seats on the committee to Democrats 4.
The fact that these things are being pulled out of the budget today, and as of today, there is no mention or discussion of a replacement plan.
State Senator LaTanya Johnson, the longest-serving Democrat on the committee.
They pulled out absolutely everything. And the question remains, what are they going to do about it? If they're pulling these things out of this budget, what are they going to replace it with? And as of today, there's nothing.
As this moves forward over the next couple of weeks, what do you see as the role of Democrats on the Budget Committee?
I think the role of Democrats on this committee is to highlight the differences between the governor's budget and what's being proposed. There's a difference. Oftentimes we see things under-resourced in our budgets coming out of joint finance. And if you're funding things and you're not funding them to scale, then you're not doing a service, because you're guaranteeing for those programs to fail or to struggle, such as special education. We're seeing that it's costing schools millions of dollars, and they're being forced to go to referendum. And for those lucky schools whose referendums are passed, they're in a wonderful position. But for those school districts where the referendums fail, They're facing budget cuts, severe budget cuts, staff cuts, larger classroom sizes, and it's an unfortunate place for us to be in education.
What do Democrats think of the governor and Republican leaders having some talks at least about a tax cut, potential tax cut agreement?
I think that that's important. It's important for the taxpayers, especially for those areas that are going to referendums. We are asking those residents to pay twice. They're already paying for their property taxes, for their school systems, and then they're having to go to referendum and say, look, we're willing to pay extra just as long as our kids get the education that they deserve. And it's unfair. We need to be trying to give some money back to residents, but we need to make sure that we're funding the things that we're supposed to be funding so we don't have to ask them for extra.
Do you think there is a potential agreement on taxes that would get Republican and Democratic votes?
That I don't know. Those discussions are up to the governor and the leadership.
What do you see playing out over the next couple of weeks in the committee broadly?
I think we're going to be faced with a lot of tough choices. What gets put back into the budget and at what rate do we invest? And I think that those are going to be some heated conversations, long discussions, but we want to make sure that we're doing what's best for Wisconsin.
In your chamber, in the Senate, do you think Republicans will need some Democratic votes to pass a budget out of the Senate?
I hope they do, because then that gives us more room for negotiation. Our numbers are extremely close in the Senate. We are only 2 people down. And so I think that that's going to force them to come to the table, and I hope they do. We are now at an opportunity to actually have input in what happens in this state capitol, and before we were not. So I'm banking on the fact that they're going to need our vote.
All right, so the new fiscal year begins July 1st. Jaron.
Matt, jubilation here in Chicago on this Sunday. The first American Pope, Pope Leo XIV, born in Chicago. Coming up, the widespread reaction from both here in Chicago and across Wisconsin, and the new Pope's impact on politics.